Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all. Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books, and today I'm going to be doing my July wrap-up and my August TBR. As I mentioned in the beginning of July, I was gone for half the month. I was on vacation, so yeah, I still actually managed to finish 3 whole books, which, considering how long I was gone for, I actually think that's pretty impressive. So going into this video, because there was only 3, I wasn't going to rank them. However, I am changing my mind literally right this second, and I am going to rank them. So let's get into it. Before I jump in, I will just say these 3 books, none of them blew me away. Like, they're all okay. I would say they're all good, but none of them are like great. None of them are gonna be on my favorite for the year. So I kind of like them all equally. I think they all have, like, you know, good things about them and some other things that I struggled with. So let's jump in with my 3rd favorite book of July, and that's going to be Devil May Cry by Sherrilyn Kenyon. I don't know what number book this is in the series. It's at least 9, maybe 10 in her Dark Hunter series. And the previous book, the one I read right before this one, I really, really liked. So I had high expectations going into this one. And I found this book to be not as good as the previous book. I thought that the character development was not as good. The world building was not as good. The plot was not as good. The previous book had this really, like, epic, big stakes plot. And I feel like this one had a much smaller plot. Even though the world is at stake again, I don't know. I just felt like, I don't know, the plot just didn't seem as, like, big and epic as me. But it wasn't, like, all bad. I did still like it. I did like that the gods in this world have a really big presence in this book. And a lot of the books in this series, we hear about Zeus and we hear about Hades and we hear about all these gods. And they really play a big part. Like, they're actual characters with dialogue, with scenes. And I thought that was really cool. So that's one thing I actually really liked. The romance in this book, though, I gotta say, out of all the relationships in this series so far, I feel like this one was kind of toxic, if I'm being honest. And I mean, what I mean by that is, like, one of the characters, like, stole the powers of the other character. The guy wants to kill her mother, and, like, there's a lack of trust, and even though they resolve it by the end, or so they claim, like, I don't know. So I felt kind of like meh when I got to the end of it. So it's not great, but it's not terrible. It's just meh. My 2nd favorite book of July is going to be The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew, and the cards are falling out of it. Anywho, so this is a YA fantasy, and basically it's about a young girl who goes to this, like, special school to train in, like, this magic, basically, that allows them to, like, walk through worlds, yada, yada, yada. But she, of course, is, like, special, so she calls, like, dark ones and demons to her. That's kind of really all you need to know going into it. And I gotta be honest, this is another book that kind of left me feeling meh by the end. So let's start with what I liked about this book. What I liked going in was the main character. So the main character, Delaney, Elaine for short, she is deaf. And I thought that that was, like, really cool. I've never read a YA fantasy like this, where the protagonist, the main character, has been hearing impaired. So I was really interested to see how that would affect her experiences with all the magical stuff going on in this book. And in the beginning, I think the author does a really good job, like, bringing that to life. She mentions that Lane has a cochlear implant, so she can hear things, but obviously not the same as others, so she has a hard time in school. Her teachers aren't understanding, yada, yada, yada. So I really, really liked that. But then in the back half of the book, it's like they never mention it again. Never mention it again. So honestly, I totally forgot that her character was deaf until like the very end of the book. And I was like, oh yeah, that's supposed to be a thing. And I would love to know from someone in that community, like, I'm not saying that her character has to be defined by this, but the fact that she's deaf, but yet doesn't seem to have any issues with anything in the back half of the book, I don't know, it felt kind of disingenuous to me. Like, I was really interested to hear about her unique struggles. I thought that could have made her character really unique, but again, it just kind of like fell off in the second half of the book, so I thought that was really bizarre. And again, this whole concept of like being able to walk between worlds, she's kind of one of these chosen ones, special type characters, and I am kind of over that trope at this point, but if you are someone that likes the chosen one trope, you might really, really like this. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. I love how dark this book gets. I love the dark and the demons and the spirits, and there's like possession and hell and all this stuff going on, and I love a dark story, so I liked all that. But I just felt like, again, there were some questions that are left unanswered. I didn't fully connect with the characters. I didn't fully connect with the plot. I love the world building. So because of all of that, at the end of the day, I was just left kind of feeling, meh, it was okay. It could have been better. So that brings me to my number one favorite book of July, Cell by Stephen King. And let me just say, even though I picked this one as my favorite, it's still just kind of a meh book to me. Has some great stuff, has some stuff that I didn't really connect with. If you've ever read The Stand by Stephen King, I thought this was very similar, but not as well done. In The Stand, there is a virus that basically kind of causes the end of the world, the end of civilization. But in this book, it is cell phones. So basically, there is like this pulse that goes through cell phones, and anyone that's using a cell phone basically becomes a mindless zombie. And the people that are left behind kind of have to figure out how to survive. I feel like this book is very topical and dated at the same time. I feel like the whole commentary on cell phones and cell phones turning people into like mindless like animals is funny, but also in today's day and age, like most people don't use cell phones for actual phone calls anymore, right? It's all text and social media. So the book is both like timeless and dated at the same time. So I really love the premise. I really love the setup of this. I think it's quite clever. Now, where this book, like, not that it fell apart, but where it didn't really hook me was the characters. I felt like the characters in this book are very typical of Stephen King characters. If you've read any Stephen King book, you'll know what I'm talking about. So because of that, I feel like there wasn't really anything special about any of these characters and nothing that really like gripped me. They're just like average people, you know, like average guys. And, you know, I guess that's kind of intentional, right? Because in a lot of his books, it's usually just quote unquote regular people that end up in these irregular situations. But in this one, again, because this is like almost my 50th book by this point, I need like a little bit more in order to like really appreciate a King book. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked it for what it was. Again, it's not going to be a favorite, either a favorite King book or a favorite of the year. And you know, that's okay. Some books are just meant to be like enjoyed and then you can set them aside and move on. So those are the 3 books that I finished Some of you may remember that there are actually 3 other books that I started in July, but I am carrying them over into August because they are quite chunky. So those 3 books are Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. This is my adult fantasy. I've gotten about 400 pages in, and I feel like I have just started. Because even though I've read 400 pages, there are still over 800 pages left. So I'm really going to have to pick up the pace if I want to finish this one by the end of August. But that is my goal, so I'm really going to try. Also working on my rando pick of the month, and that is Sisters of the Snake. This is a YA fantasy, kind of a parent trap situation where we have 2 young girls. One's a princess, one's a thief. They figure out that they're twins. They switch places. Shenanigans ensue. Now, I've been doing better at this one. I'm halfway through this one. So there's no reason I shouldn't finish this one by the end of August, but you never know. And then finally, I have my YA fantasy Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 6th, I think, book in the Throne of Glass series. I'm not quite halfway with this one, so this is another one I'm going to have to really keep the pace up if I want to finish it by the end of the month, but I think I can do it. So because I only had those 3 books, I really kind of debated how many books I wanted to add, and I've decided to add 3 additional books to my August TBR, so that'll bring my total up to 6. So the first one that I picked out is I wanted to do another reader recommendation, and that's going to be The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. I've heard a lot about Patrick Ness. I've never read anything by him, so super excited to start this one. So this book was recommended to me by End of Sight 9841. So if you're watching, thank you for recommending this to me. I apologize it's gotten so long, or it's taken me so long to get to this one, but I'm finally starting it and looking forward to it. Next up, I of course have to continue my Stephen King journey with Lisey's story. Now, I've heard a lot of good things about Lisey's story, and the fact that it is a female protagonist is giving me like really high hopes. What I did not realize going into this one is that this is quite a chunky book. This is another, like 900, it's over 900 pages. Now, to be fair, this is the large print version, so, the words are quite big, but when I picked this one up, I was like, oh dang. So yeah, I'm going to do the best I can, really hoping that I can continue my streak of 1 King book a month though, so wish me luck with this one. And finally, I have my book box book. So I tried to find the shortest one I could find to offset some of these chunky books. So I ended up with All These Bodies by Kendare Blake. I think that's how you pronounce it, Kendare. I have never read anything by Blake before. I know she's kind of popular. I know she's written a lot of vampire stories. She has a couple series that are popular. This will be my first book of hers, and if it goes well, maybe it won't be my last. But this one I think is under 300 pages, just under 300 pages. So hopefully this one will help balance out some of those more chunky books that I have. So that is it for me today for my July wrap-up and my August TBR. So now I want to know from you, what was your favorite book in July? What are you reading in August? Let Swiper and I know all your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff and more furry friends coming your way soon. All right, everyone. Happy reading.